next conversation is about how Europe is actually putting capital and pipeline behind the deep tech of defense strategic value. NIF, the NATO Innovation Fund, has been one of the most active backers of European frontier tech. Tytan is helping bridge the procurement gap between the largest defense buyers and the most ambitious startups. Please welcome Aaron and Tytan.
Thank you for the introduction, and thank you, Balázs, for joining me today. Balázs and I were just remembering our initial conversations as we were trying to complete the deal. It's one of our most recent investments, one we closed, I think, just before the Munich Security Conference.
Correct.
And we co-invested alongside Amira, Lakestar, OTB, and others into what I think is a really interesting business on counter-UAS. I will let Balázs describe a little bit more about his business, but just to give some background to any of the founders in the room, the NATO Innovation Fund backs deep tech companies that are headquartered in one of our 24 LP nations to advance the defense, security, and resilience of Europe. We've made 21 investments to date. We also have a small but growing portfolio of managers, so we do take LP positions as well in typically first-time funds in frontier markets in Europe. And then we work very closely with both our GPs and our founders to help scale their businesses, because our view is the capital is inconsequential unless it gets in the hand of the end users, which is principally the warfighter. But Balázs, when we invested, one of the conversations I remember having with my partners was that this is a once-in-a-generational opportunity to really reshape the landscape around air defense. Can you tell me a little bit more about sort of what my investment thesis means and what Tytan does?
Yeah. Thank you very much. First of all, I'm very, very happy to be here, and more than happy to have NATO Innovation Fund as an investor. We had, of course, initial discussions, which are very tough, as in every investment, and every funders know that it is always very tough at the beginning. But then, when we made it happen, I can be really, I have proved that NATO Innovation Fund is also one of the most active also investor to bringing the possibilities to the companies and also to the different countries. They are backed by 24 countries. For me, it's a very emotional story because where we started 2.5 years ago, it was the first year of the Ukrainian conflict. And we went there with my co-founder without any knowledge about what's happening there. And that was the time where we experienced our first air attacks. So this is also what you really, it was for us made a huge impact, right? So because it was just 1 kilometer from us. And we were like, okay, we have to solve this problem, not just for Ukraine, but also for Europe. And this was our initial motivation why we started Tytan. I mean, what we realized that the defense landscape is changing completely. We need like very, very fast iteration cycles. We need new kind of technology. I mean, why startups in defense has a rule now, right now? Because that was also not usual, right? We had just defense primes in the last 40 years, and now it's something changed. It changed because we have now software, we have now unmanned systems, and the entry on the technology side is much easier. But the entry on the procurement side, the entry on the government side, is not easier. So but the governments now realize what is the impact and what is the possibility, what startups can bring into the ecosystem. And this is also why we started Tytan, because we wanted to really make an impact on the European air defense, because we realized we need a new architecture, we need cost-effective, mass-deployed, and network systems where a startup attitude, what we need now in defense. We have to adapt our products in weekly and monthly basis. And this is also what motivates ourselves, because we see how we can bring a real value into the ecosystem.
I want to kind of pick up on the procurement cycles, and I think there's a link there to supply chain. But one thing I think is important, going back to that story of going to Ukraine 2 years ago, you could have founded this business anywhere. You could have set it up in Ukraine. You're originally from Hungary. You did your advanced degree in Germany with students from all across the globe. You could have chosen to domicile your business anywhere. Your co-founder is Turkish.
Yeah.
Why did you choose Germany?
So, I mean, for me, Europe has a special meaning, right? So when I came from Hungary and from a very, very small country with limited possibilities, and I just ended up in Germany, and I was like, hey, so many possibilities we have here. And sometimes I have the feeling that Germans are not really realizing which possibilities we have in this country and which possibilities we have in Europe, right? Because we are growing up in system, and this is everything obvious. But it's not obvious, and it's not given, right? And when I saw that, for example, I started in the Technical University of Munich, which is one of the best universities in Europe, and I was starting first a student initiative. And everyone was asking, why are you doing that? You're not getting paid for that. You are not really, you're just doing that next to your studies. You should focus on your studies. And I was like, no, I really want to make an impact, and I really want to do something which is special, because we have the infrastructure, we have the capital, and we have the talents. So you have every ingredient of the system here. Why you are not using it? And this is how the story started, and I really can recommend everyone, always when students are coming to us, hey, please participate and do also not just focus on the studies, but really focus on the experience, what you can get, because you have a lot of possibilities here, and you really have to grab it, and you have to bring like new initiatives. And also, this is also the culture what we have in Tytan. What we see in every employee and every team member, you can bring your own initiative, and you can be your own entrepreneur. And this is something, the culture I really like, because everyone is so motivated, because they see the mission, and they see when they are initiating something, they can bring it to the end, and they can really implement it, and at the end, see the product in the air flying. It's a beautiful feeling, of course, for the whole team.
No, thank you for sharing that. And I would agree with that. Said, you know, it's about seizing opportunity. And I think it's great when you build a team that reflects that, especially when you're a startup. But going back to the procurement piece, one of the biggest and I think criticisms of the DSR ecosystem is that it's dominated by the primes. They're slow, procurement cycles are long. You even see in the UK, the Defence Innovation Plan, I think, is now 2 years delayed. And if there's a new prime minister, it's literally going to be a 2-week plan if it ever gets issued. All of this is really slow, and this is a constant criticism towards government. We're seeing in Ukraine praise being lauded on startups coming out of Ukraine on their speed of innovation and what that means to their relative competitiveness versus Russia. And it may be that that pace of innovation is actually the winning ingredient. Why is it that then as you move west from the eastern flank, we're not taking those messages and those lessons into practice? And in your view, besides constantly throwing sort of low-ball criticisms at government, what has to change?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, on the procurement system, so yes, you can start with the procurement offices, but you should start with the soldiers. Because at the end, what we want to, and what we realize from the beginning, we see the soldiers as a partner. We want to equip them with the best systems we have. We are on the field with them, and this will be recognized also by the procurement offices. I think this is something which we're changing, because when you're starting from the procurement office, you're starting from the ministry, it will be very, very hard. I mean, what we realize that when we are there on the field with the soldiers, this makes a real impact, and this will be recognized everywhere. So the procurement system is very hard. I mean, the whole ecosystem is very hard, because it was created for primes, and the primes has, like, I don't know, Rheinmetall has 26 people just in Koblenz, whereas the procurement office, we of course don't have this team there, but we have to make an impact with the technology, and this is also what we realize, how we can start. And we are not taking the actions so fast. And why? I mean, what should we change? I mean, everyone has to realize that the ecosystem is changing. We don't just need the primes, of course. We need also startups. We have to, the government should be in the position that bringing the best technology into the procurement system and not the best lobby. And this is something which makes the difference. Because when you are starting with this mindset, it means that you have to open up the system for new companies, for companies which were already like in the civil had civil use case originally, but they have a very good technology they can bring into the system, and we have to make a we have to make the procurement system in a way that they are able to enter it without any lobby power. And this is, I think, what we really need to change. And I mean, in Germany, for example, there are very, very good examples, right? We have the Innovation Center in Erding, which is a very good one, because there everyone can go there, test there, and bring the technology into the system. And these initiatives we need also in other countries. And this is, I think, one of the biggest action. Ukraine is a different case. There they have this immediate need, and they don't really have time for all these procurement processes. So this is the mindset you are learning there. You are starting there with the soldiers, and this is also what matters. Everything else doesn't matter. And this is, I think, the mindset we should apply also in European countries.
How do you bring that into your business?
Yeah. I mean, the easiest way in every system, you have to find the people they want to innovate in the system, right? So they are definitely also, it's a huge system with 12,000 people, office, like in the government officials everywhere, and you don't know where you start. So you have to always find the soldiers, the people, they want to innovate the system. They are really there to bring something forward. And this is what we did. We did a lot of things, a lot of units we talked at the beginning, but at the end you will find your way when you are still trying to be active and don't give up. Of course, you will have some missed success on one side, but you will have success on the other side, and you should always focus on the success.
Yeah. No, I think that obsession with the front line is really important. And if I can pivot a little bit and quote, I'm going to jump to sort of a very large organization, but Bain Capital, one of their kind of global thought leaders is a guy called Jimmy Allen, and he's written a book on the founder's mindset, and actually that's what corporates need to adopt. It's that calcification in large organizations happens when they don't have the founder's mindset. And he's analyzed the top 10 top 10% most successful but enduring successful businesses, and it's the frontline obsession that makes the difference. And that's employees, which you get to do at a startup because you're dealing with dozens rather than thousands. It's your supply chain because you know them intimately by name, and it's your customers. And when you get that kind of equation right and you keep that as you scale, that's the difference maker. The previous presenter talked about the supply chain. And at NIF, one of the things that we do that's really important to us is we look very closely at the supply chain because Europe's industrialization isn't the issue. And I really appreciated the previous presenter showed that Europe basically outproduces the US by a factor of nearly 2. We just don't use it. We send it elsewhere. And there's no reason we need to be procuring from China, for example. And so we look very closely at the supply chain of the businesses that we back, and we look to bring that back on shore. What are your view? I mean, I know this was debated during the investment a bit. Protecting Europe and the eastern flank is very personal for you. How do you think about that supply chain dynamic, and how do you think about local procurement?
Yeah, I mean, it's a fact that Europe is producing twice more than the US, and we are still using the US technology. We are still using F-35, which is controlled by the Americans. And this is also, I'm really surprised why we are doing that when we have the capacity. We don't need the capacity of other continents. We need the US as a partner, but we cannot allow that the foreign country is controlling our supply chain or controlling our systems we procured, because this is everything about sovereignty. And when we have the capacity, we should use it. So this is something we really have to realize, how we are taking partners into the system and how we are securing our supply chain, that we are not depending on a foreign country. When Trump next day says, I will have an export or I will have taxes on my products, that it means that has a huge impact on our country. And we cannot allow this. And how we are doing that, I mean, especially in Germany, we have of course, we have the automotive industry. It's not the automotive industry, it's not BMW which will make the next drones, but all the suppliers of the automotive industry has all technology we also need in defense. So you should always look in the second row, who are the suppliers of the industry, because they have the technology you also need in defense. So we have basically everything on the component side here in Germany and also in Europe we can apply. One example for us is our motors, right? So of course, when we started the company, you shouldn't focus on supply chain. You have to get your prototype ready, and it doesn't matter if it's coming from China or it's coming from the US. Just make it. And afterwards, you are optimizing it. You are optimizing the supply chain. We had, of course, at the beginning also Chinese motors, and then with the time we replaced that with a German one. So we don't really need to apply on the Chinese manufacturer. And these are examples, and you should do that in every component in your product. And this is a huge advantage. What we see, this is one advantage, and the second advantage, it's going in a different direction. It's how you are backing your startup. Is it from European investors? Is it for US investors? We are very happy at Tytan that when we raised early this year our Series A round, it was backed by just European investors. And this is also what I hope that we can follow up on that, and we can also make our financing system mature, that we can finance also the next round in the European investors.
Okay. No, and I'm interested, kind of picking up on this. You've de-risked the supply chain to have European components. Does that come up in these procurement conversations?
Yeah.
Does that matter? Because there is a lot of discussion around national sovereignty, and you get into these complicated things, which around offsets and things like that, and that's a slightly boring, dull topic, but it's much more about, does that come up? And is that give your business a competitive edge to other technologies that either the businesses are headquartered outside of Europe or they've got components which are largely from the Far East, for example? Does that make a difference in procurement cycles?
100%. It's an advantage. It's a huge advantage to have just NATO supplied and European supplied supply chain and components on our side. I mean, we see that not just on the procurement level, but even the soldiers are asking that, if you are using a Chinese motor or not. And this is what is very, very surprising, that it's on the lowest level, is one of the first requirements we are getting. Where are your components came from? And this is definitely a huge difference also between Europe and Ukraine. In Ukraine, there's a need right now, which they cannot, of course, control everything. But in Europe, when we have now the time to prepare, we should use this time, and we shouldn't do just then when we have the conflict here, or we have in 2029 we have the eastern flank we are planning for. Until that, we have to build our own supply chain, because now maybe we have still some time for that. Ukraine didn't have this time, and this is a huge advantage we should use and we should learn from. Because at the end and on the short term is a pain, on the long term is a huge advantage.
No, I agree with that. It's a huge advantage because, part of what we're trying to do as an investor, because we have sovereign capital from 24 countries, is not just about improving our defense capabilities and backing deep tech companies, but it's also about reindustrializing Europe and making sure we produce things, but you get a virtuous circle. And so I think the ability to plan ahead makes an awful lot of sense. I'm also a big believer in an overused phrase, but never waste a good crisis. And if we have the opportunity, we should absolutely seize that. I want to shift a little bit into, because you're very close to the front line, how you see the defense and security market evolving. You've touched on that a little bit about Europe needing to take advantage of this opportunity, but how do you see our sector evolving? And equally, what does that mean for Titan in the next couple of years? Do you continue to innovate and build organically, or do you grow by acquisition? Do you build, you've opened a new factory in Germany, do you build outside of Germany? What's next?
Yeah. The easy answer is we will take every step which takes us on the next level, right? So when it's an M&A, then it's an M&A. It's always a question what we are asking in a strategy, is it a make or buy decision? Is it something on the core technology we want to have in the company? Or is it something we have to do in a partner? Or is it something where we should also buy a company or acquire a company for that? And I think this is definitely part of the ecosystem, because we are building these pieces, and sometimes I have the feeling that everyone is thinking a standalone system and I can do by myself. But at the end, what the big value is for Europe is when we are partnering and we are bringing companies also together, it makes also from the procurement side much easier. They don't have to handle like with single companies to bring them together, to say them, hey, please, this company should work with this company together, but you can build alliances and you can build partnerships and also you can buy companies. And this is also what we are always doing. I mean, we are working together with defense primes like KNDS. We are working together with Hensoldt. We are working together with Exxon. So we have a lot of partnerships also on the prime side. And this is also what makes our system and our ecosystem so valuable. You have the component of the platforms. You have the component of the primes which can already scale, and you have the components of the startups which are very, very fast and iterating very fast and bringing the new unmanned systems into the system. And this is also what we realized, and I think acquisition has a huge impact on that, because as a funder, you are always looking for, okay, what is the next step which is bring us to not 0 to 1, because it's already there, but from 1 to 10. And when you have the steps, then you are always trying to do that. And this is also what I'm thinking, of course, every day, and what every funder should also think, I think. What is the next big thing where we can bring to the next Titan to the next level?
No, agree with that. I like the ambition, and I think the challenge then is, can European investors continue to back those kinds of ambitions? I think we have a couple of minutes. If there's a question from the audience. All right, then you get to listen to me again. Bosch, one thing I would like to explore, because your round was oversubscribed. And I remember, we fought very hard for our allocation. If you have advice for other founders in the room, it's because I believe fundamentally, and this has always sort of guided me as an investor, is capital is not the only currency. And I don't know if you share that belief, but it's what were you looking for with an oversubscribed round? What was important to you, and are there any lessons for startups in the room?
Yeah, of course, it's a luxury problem, first of all. It's a good problem to have. But on the other side, as a funder, should always focus on customers and on talents. This is what I always doing, right? So when you are focusing on customers and on talents, then the capital will come. And then you will have an oversubscribed round, which is a very nice problem to have. When you have an oversubscribed round, then you have to see, okay, who is the investor who is bringing the most value on the cap table? Then you have, of course, hard discussions with existing investors who want to do more than pro rata. Then you have to push them back. Then one is not happy. And then these are discussions which are of course very good and very. I mean, but on the other side, you have to own your cap table, because at the end, the funder should stay as a funder, and investors should invest in funders and not in companies, because this is it's a huge value for a company when the founders are still there and still operative. And this is also why I really like the mindset of the investors who are like very founder-friendly and say, hey, we believe in you, and we believe in you as a founder, and automatically the company will be better because you are not like, you don't want to have like control from the investors. And this is one of the things. And the second is, okay, who is the investor who is bringing the most value in your business? And you have to try out that before the round. So it's not just that they invested and then you are trying to find out how good they are, because it's already too late. You are married. You cannot get rid of the investor, so it's very, very hard. So you should always take the time to really engage with the investors beforehand that you are making the right decision, because this is a lifetime decision. This is not just that next day you can say bye. You cannot. And this is also what I'm doing. I'm trying to engage also for longer periods. I mean, when I met NIF, for example, it was even before we started the company, or it was like maybe in the very, very early days, 2 years ago at the MSC, in the Munich Security Conference. And from there on, we were engaging. And then you see, okay, is it someone we want to get on your cap table or not? And this is, of course, a lot of effort, but at the end, the value is huge.
No, I think that's right. I think when you build that relationship earlier, it does sort of compress the diligence, a lot of the questions that you want to ask around the founder, the team, the ambition. You've been discussing that over time, and you get a sense of sort of, it's a bit like dating before you get married. And I think it is really important because you get to see, and I'm a big believer that you should spend time together just to see people through different iterations of how do you deal with different challenges, things that come up in the business. And then if you have built that trust and relationship, you then have the opportunity, I think, to help put that syndicate together. But thank you, Balázs. I think we are at time, but thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the discussions. I'm also here today. If you have any questions, then please let me know.
Thank you.